Alright guys, welcome back. Now's the question why this one is not that easy on instance methods. And this is something we will find out in this video over here. So therefore, let's start directly at the Ubuntu VM. Alright, so here we are back at the Ubuntu VM and let's have a look into this application once again. So within apps, Frida Func, we are opening this with JDX GUI. Alright, here we have it open. Let's see. Com app hacking Frida Func. And here we are having our main activity. Here we have it. So we have seen calling and static method is absolutely easy in Frida. All we need to do is we simply need to get this class reference and then we can simply call this method. We can actively trigger it. We have done this for the next level function over here. So if this one has a static attribute, very easy. Now is the question, why is this not that easy on an instance method? For example, if you take a look back in our player class, this one over here. So if you want to call method, for example, increase life or decrease life, why can we not simply use this class reference and then calling this method over here? Let's find this out right now. So we try to call an instance method and we will observe and see what Frida is telling us afterwards. Alrighty? Okay, let's go. Therefore, I'm getting back the smartphone screen. Here we have it. We keep it in foreground. Then I'm opening a new terminal and now I'm starting the Frida server. So ADB shell, root privileges. Then we change into data and local temp. And then we start this Frida server. Nice. This one is now running in the background. And now we are opening this Visual Studio Code Editor and we do the exact same approach like we would have done this on static method. I mean, we could use this one over here, but to get even more practice, let's close them and rewrite this completely on our own. Alright, new file, JavaScript. And let's get back the code on the right. The smartphone, we will pull this out later on. Alright. Everything has been set up so far. Now let's see. The first thing we need to do is we need to tell Frida to connect to the JVM. Once again, we are dealing with Java code, and therefore we need our connection to the JVM. So let's do this. Java.perform. And here we have it. Our parameter, once again, this anonymous function. And this one over here. Okay, now we need to get this reference to this class. In this case, it's the player class. So let's see. I name this also player and I put the mouse on the right that you can see this text. So now getting this reference in java.use and then we are having com app hacking Frida Func dot and the class is player dot player. And this time I'm making the comments directly. So getting a reference to the player class. Okay, now we're having the reference to this player class and let's try to call this method, for example, decrease life. Player.decrease life. Alright, let's run the script and see why it's not working. So we take this, we are opening a new terminal and here we're connecting to this process. Frida-u and com app hacking Frida Func. I mean, the package name is this time luckily the same, but if you want to be sure, then please have a look into the Android manifest XML to get this one over here. So let's see. Here we're having the package identifier. Okay. We connect to this process. Oh yeah, we can see it has not been started, therefore we cannot connect to it. If we pull out our smartphone, oh, this connection seems to got lost. Let's open it once again. There we go. We can see this process has not been opened. Therefore, Frida cannot attach to a process that does not exist. Before we start this on the smartphone, let's simply use Frida to do this. So by appending this -f and then -- no pause, we can run this application over here with Frida. Alright. Application has been started, we are hooked or attached to this process. Now let's try to call this method. We are getting an error. I mean, this is something we could have expected because I already announced it in this way, but let's see what this error is telling us. So, in decreased life, we cannot call the instance method without an instance. Alright, what does this over here means? If we take back a look into this one, into our code, so within the main activity, we can see this one here was a static method, next level. Calling a static method is simply like main activity dot next level, so class name dot method name. The reason why we can call a static method in this way is we do not have to create an object. A static method is not being bound to an object, and therefore we can simply trigger it in this way. If we are now taking a look into our player class, there we have it, we can see if we want to call a method, for example increased life or decreased life, these are not static, and therefore we have to create an object first. And this is exactly what happens in our code. Within the main activity we can see we are creating here this new player object. So here we are creating a new object. Now we're having this player instance, and this one over here, and then on this player instance we can call this method decreased life. This is the reason why we cannot simply use it in this way over here, in this one, because here we do not have an object. We are just having a class reference, and then we are calling a method which is bound to an object, but we do not have an object right now. Alright? Maybe let's do some little bit of an explanation, because also class, object and instance, these words gets mixed together a lot, and to be honest, I'm not 100% sure regarding to objects and instances. But nevertheless, let me try to explain this to you, because then I guess it's getting a little bit more clear. Alright? Therefore, let's take a quick look on the graphic tablet. Okay, so here we are back on the graphic tablet, and now let's have a look into classes, object and instances. And yeah, why we need an instance to call this method over here. Alrighty, so therefore let's go. So on the left we've got our player class, and this one over here. And this is our class. If we now want to use this class over here, we have to create an object. And we can do this in the following way. So let's split this over here. Player equals new player. Okay, and this is how we can create a new object, and this one appears over here. This is now our player object. And now we can use these methods on this player object over here. So for example, this method, decrease life, and this one. We can now simply use player, our object, dot decrease life. And this would decrease the life of this player object, of this one over here. And those lives over here, these, are bound to this object right now. So this player object, maybe let's write this down. This player object is now losing a life if we call this method over here. Okay? Alright, so the difference between a static method and an instance method is this one over here. This one. This is generating a new object, and this is also something we need to do in Frida. We will have a look into this one in a moment, but for now, let me try to explain you the difference between objects and instances. But before we go into this, maybe let's try to clarify these words, classes, objects and instances. As already mentioned, I might not be 100% correct on this one, but I can explain it in a way that we can understand and use it in Frida. And to be honest, regarding to this course over here, that's absolutely enough. So this is enough we need to know about these terms. Alrighty? Okay, let's have a look into this one. Okay, so on the top left we have now our class, our player class. And you can think of this like some blueprint of our player. So these are the method and fields we can have in our player over here. Okay? Alright, next we've got an object. And to create an object we have to use it in the following way. New player. So now we are creating an object out of this class. Within our application memory, this is our application memory, we are now having a player object in there. Okay, the last term we've got over here is an instance, and I keep explaining it in the following way. So here we are creating a new player object on the right, and now this one over here, player, this is now an instance, and this is now a concrete object. For example, this one over here. This is now our instance. Okay, for now it might not be 100% clear what the difference of all of this is. Okay, classes and objects might be clear, but instances and objects, it's still a little bit, similar. Therefore, let's create a new object over here. So here we're creating now a new player. And this one over here, and this one is now a new player instance. Player 2. This means we are now having a second player in our application over here. So this one over here, this is another instance. And this one also has some lives. Okay, so this is the difference between these three components: this class, this object, and an instance. We can think of an instance like having a copy of an object, but to be honest, it makes it a little bit more confusing than it helps, at least for me. So if we are talking about an instance, we are talking about this one over here, for example, this player instance. So this one over here, of course, also has a memory location. For example, over here. This is now our instance of this player, and we've also got this instance of this player. So now we are having two players at all over here. This one and this one. Alright, so I hope this was a little bit helpful for you right now. We will now go back to our Frida script, and there we will figure out how we can call an instance method. Alrighty, and let's switch back to the Ubuntu VM. Okay, so here we are back at our Ubuntu VM, and we have seen this approach over here doesn't work. And the reason for this is now clear. We cannot call an instance method on a class. So in this case, decrease life, the application doesn't know on what object it needs to decrease this lives, because we are not providing an object over here. And this is exactly what Frida is telling us. If you take a look back into this one, we can see we cannot call an instance method without having an instance. And therefore, we have now two possibilities. One is searching the memory for an existing instance, then we can use this one over here, and then we can call this method, or also playing around with these fields. This is something we will learn in the next chapter, because this is our second huge part regarding to our Frida hacking journey over here. The first one over here is regarding to manipulating class methods. The second part is working with existing objects, and the third part is playing around with the NDK, the native development kit. We can also use Frida to hook into C, C++ functions, libraries, and play around with them. And it's absolutely amazing how much we can do inside a C, C++ function. And for example, we can hook functions like string compare, and then we can figure out when this method is being called, which arguments are being provided, and what's the return value of this native function. Absolutely amazing, but for now, let's finish this chapter over here. This is about hacking and triggering class methods. So now's the question, how can we actively trigger an instance method? To find this out, we will once again taking a look into the Java code, and then we will apply this to our Frida script over here. And this time it's a little bit different, but not that much. Therefore, let's have a look into this one. So this one is not working, we can get rid of this one. Now let's see how we can call an instance method in Java. So calling an instance method in Java, if we are not having an existing instance, without having an instance. Alright, and let me put this on the right, there we go. So if you want to call this decreased life function, the things we have to do are the following. We have to create our player instance, and here we're creating a new player object. And then we can use this player instance to call this method, decrease life. And this is exactly what we are also seeing in JDX. So if you're taking a look in this code, there we go. Here we are creating a new player. And here we are using this player object to call this instance method. All right. Now's the question, how can we create a new instance in Java? And this one is done in the following way. The things we need to do for this one is getting the class reference, so this player class over here. And then we need to add this new operator to create a new instance. Let me show you how we can do this. Therefore, maybe we need to be a little bit more exact on this one right now. So this one here is the player class reference. This is this new player over here. All right. And then we are creating now a new instance. So this is now the player instance. This is this one over here. Maybe let's get rid of this one. So this one is the player class reference, and this one is the player instance. Okay, for now let's only focus on the right part, this one over here. So here we are creating a new object, a new player object, and we are using this class, this player class reference, and then we are using the new operator, this one over here. So within Frida it looks like the following. We are also using our player class reference, and then we are calling this new operator with $.new. This is how we can create a new instance. Now we have this player instance, and we can use this one to call this method. So we are having this instance right now. And this time, let's see what instance method we want to call. Let's have a look back in JDX. And this time we want to call the impossible method, this one over here, which is increase life. Because this method is not being called anywhere, and this increases the life of the player. All right. So now we're having this instance, and therefore we can simply use player instance dot this method name. This is how we can create a new instance and triggering a method actively on this object. So regarding to the naming over here, it would look like following. This is the player reference, and here we are having the player instance. And now we can use player instance dot increase life. This is the Java code, and this is our Frida code over here. Regarding to the Frida code, I would like to be a little bit more exact on what's in class and what's an instance, because otherwise we will mess up our code if this is getting a little bit more complex. Okay, so absolutely amazing. Let's see if this one works out. And therefore I comment this out because this is not invalid code anymore. And then, yeah, let's see. And therefore we are opening a new terminal. We get back our smartphone screen. And we're also making our Frida connection. We can restart this application, it doesn't matter. And now we are also opening the ADB logcat, because this method is printing out some statements. So we can observe if we can actively trigger this method over here. And we can also see that the lives are being increased. Therefore, let's open also the ADB logcat. ADB logcat. All right. I organized these windows real quick. Okay, so there we have it organized. I mean, the smartphone or the application over here, we do not need to observe this until it crashes. Then we need to have a look into this one. Otherwise, it's not important what happens over here. Okay, so now let's trigger this function. There we go. This is impossible. This method does not get called anywhere in this code. And we can see the player lives has been increased to 6. We can also see a new player object has been created. If we go back, this is something that's been printed out in the constructor. So we are creating a new player object and we are calling this method on this player object. Absolutely amazing, right? Let's increase the lives further and further. So therefore, let's wrap this in a function. Sorry, mouse back on the right. A function increase our player lives. Whoops, once is enough. Okay. Now let's insert it over here. And now let's call this function once again. Increase our player lives. There we have it once again. But, player lives increasing, lives equals 6. Strange, right? Let's call it once again. The lives seems not to be increased. So this is not a problem because we have wrapped it in a function. If you also would do it over here, yes. So we can see the player lives doesn't increase. Why is this the reason? Let's find this out on the graphic tablet. Okay, so here we are back on the graphic tablet, and now let's find out why these player lives are not being increased. We can see they are stuck at the value 6. And this one over here, this one over here, this one over here, and also this one over here. So let's find out what's the reason behind this. But first, let's clean the screen script a little bit. There we go. So this is not being longer required, and also add some comments. So here we are creating a new player instance. And here we're calling the instance method increase live on this instance. All right, so now let's have a look what this script is doing over here. Okay, and therefore let's keep this in foreground and enable our pen, and let's see. All right, so here we have this. Okay, this line over here is simply just getting a reference to the player class in our Java virtual machine. So within our JVM, we are now having a reference to the player class. Okay, nothing more. All right. And then we've got this line over here, and now things start to get interesting. This one is creating a new object, or in this case, a new instance. So this one over here, this is a new player instance. All right, this means this player instance has some lives. This one over here. So lives are now set to 5. And then we are calling this method over here, increase live, on this player instance. This means these lives are being increased by 1. We are having 6 live afterwards. All right, everything is working so far so good. Now let's see what happens if we're executing this method once again. So we have now created this player instance, and now we're calling this method once again. Over here, once again, we are getting the player class reference in our Java virtual machine. All right, but then over here, we are once again creating a new instance. So this one over here will now create a new player instance. This one over here. And this player instance also has some lives. Equals set to 5, because this is the default value in our constructor. Therefore, if we are now calling this method increase live once again, we are increasing the life of this player instance. So now within our application memory, and this one over here, we are now having 2 player instances inside here. And this one, which is the newly generated player 2, and we are also having this one, and we are also having this one, which is player 1. So these are now 2 objects in our application. And if we now call it once again, the following thing happens. This one has been called. All right. Now once again, we are getting this player class reference. Once again, we are creating a new player instance over here. This one once again has lives set to 5. And this one once again being increased by 1. And this is why we are having these debug outputs over here. So if you take a look into this one, so here we can see player lives increasing lives to 6, but we can also see a new player object has been created, and then we've got this method over here. Here once again, player lives increased to 6, so these 3 are bound together, and then we are having it once again. a new player object has been created. This is impossible. Player lives increased to 6. And then once again, a new player object has been created. This is impossible, and so on. So we are not increasing the lives of a single object. We are creating multiple objects and increasing the lives of them, but only once. Therefore, if we want to increase the lives on our player object over here, we have to call it multiple times. So if we do it in this way, then we are increasing the lives of one player object, because here we are having the reference to one instance, to one player in our screen. If we toggle this once again, and maybe also put the smartphone behind this, there we go. So here we are creating now a new player instance, and then we are calling this method multiple times on the same instance. So this means the lives of this instance should increase. Oops. There we go. And let's try this out. Okay, so we take this code, we paste it in here, and then we're calling our method. Not this one, then we have to write it. The method name is increase. There we have it. All right, let's observe the ADB output over here. Okay, now we call it. And then we have to scroll down. There we have it. Player lives increased 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. So now we are having a player object with multiple lives. And if we call this once again on the left, and this one over here, then we can see once again, the lives start at 6 and it's being increased in this way. The only question right now is, where is this player object, right? If we take a look in our smartphone, I mean, it's not there. And if we click on this one, we are losing lives, and these lives are not being set to 6. These lives are being set to 5, the default value. So where are those players? We are now having 3 or 4 player objects, but they are not visible. Let's see if we can find them. Nope. Also not here. Are they gone? Are they even existing? These objects are definitely there, because we can see we are increasing those lives of them. But we cannot see them in our smartphone over here, because they only exist in memory. The memory of this application would now look like the following. So here we are having now all these objects, and within the memory we are also having them. I mean, I do not have enough colors for this one. But here we are having a new player object. Here we are having a new player object. And so on. So we have created now all these player objects in memory, but visible is only one. And this one over here, because these objects are not being applied to the smartphone screen. So they are existing in memory, but they are not visible on the smartphone over here. Therefore, they can also not interact with this application. They are completely useless for our game right now. If we get hit on our player icon, we can see this over here, we are losing a life. This means even if we are having now an object that has, let's see how many lives, 13, 14 lives, it's absolutely useless. And this is exactly what we learn in chapter 2. In chapter 2, we learn how we can use or find this object over here and increase the lives of this one. That in this case, we are not having 2 lives anymore. We are having 100,000 or even more. Alright? Alright, so this is all for this video right now. We have learned in this chapter over here how we can hook and manipulate functions. We have hooked parameters, return values. We have modified static fields. We have actively triggered static methods, and now also actively triggered instance methods by creating a new instance. We learned a lot. And don't worry, we do not stop right now. It will be even more amazing, because after finishing the next huge chapter in Frida, we will have a lot of fun with our SpaceBang application. Because in a mobile game, most of the things are objects, and we want to work on existing objects to increase the gold, life, health, experience, whatever we want inside here. Alrighty, so I'm looking forward to see you in the second big chapter of Frida. See you there.